For joining us, the Catholic Church begins a 9-day mourning period for Pope Francis. The 88-year-old pontiff died Monday morning, less than a day after appearing in St. Peter's Square for Easter.
The Vatican says the Pope died of a stroke that put him into a coma, leading to heart failure. Just last month, the Pope was released from the hospital after a 5-week stay for double pneumonia. Francis was the first Pope born in the Americas, putting migrants, the poor, and the marginalized at the center of his 12-year papacy.
That is his greatest legacy. He showed us that, what is not essential when you're Pope is to be on a pedestal. What is essential is to be with the people.
Pope Francis's funeral has to be held within 6 days of his death. In a break with tradition, Pope Francis will be laid to rest at a basilica he was fond of, St. Mary Major, which is a church in Rome dedicated to the Virgin Mary. Millions of people around the globe mourning the pontiff's death.
And locally, Brock Wilson spoke with a number of Catholics attending Mass today. Brock, what were they saying?
Christy Jacob, surprisingly, it wasn't an incredibly somber scene at the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception in downtown Wichita. Parishioners told me they're proud of the way the Pope served. While Pope Francis has sometimes been described as progressive, many I spoke with are remembering him as a Pope for the people. Others using the word inclusive to describe the Pope, advocating for immigrants and supporting same-sex civil unions. But everyone I spoke with also agreed Pope Francis never swayed away from the beliefs of the Catholic Church.
As the pontiff of Christ on earth, I don't think he's ever conducted himself in anything counter to what the Catholic Church has always professed.
Fundamentally, he never taught anything against our church's dogma, which is what we are called to believe.
I think he tried to be more inclusive with people, reach out to people, bring people together.
Now, the Pope's death kicks off 9 days of official mourning, which will conclude with his funeral. The Catholic Diocese of Wichita will announce its own memorial mass at a later date, but Bishop Kimmy with the Catholic Diocese says it will likely happen on the day of Pope Francis' funeral. Christy?
Brock, thanks. We're hearing from your representatives about Pope Francis passing. U.S. Senator Roger Marshall says we should pray for our Catholic brothers and sisters statewide as we mourn this loss. Congressman Ron Estes says he dedicated his life to the Catholic Church and to serving others and prays for those in mourning. And U.S. Senator Jerry Moran says Pope Francis emphasized the needs of the poor and the forgotten to people of all faiths. May the Pope rest in peace with the Lord for whom he served his life.
President Donald Trump orders the United States flag to be flown at half-staff as a mark of respect for the memory of Pope Francis. The order applies to all public buildings and grounds at all military posts and naval stations and on all naval vessels until sunset on the day of internment.
And as the world continues to mourn, church leaders looking ahead to conclave. That's the process where Catholic cardinals select the next pope. The participating cardinals stay in the Sistine Chapel, and they are forbidden to speak to anyone outside this process. Rounds of voting will go on until one candidate receives a 2/3 supermajority. This could take several days, and as the crowd waits outside the Vatican, they'll be looking for the chapel chimney to emit white smoke that you see there. That means they've picked a pope.